Well, good morning. Happy Tuesday.
Good
We
morning.
Good morning. It's been a while.
Yes, glad to be here. Glad to be with you, with our audience.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yes, yes, me too. You're watching the Today Show here on the Disability Channel. Your host, Dr. Laurie Davis, my partner in heart. I was going to say crime, but not exactly crime. Dr. Ramin Modiri, and Tuesday we like to discuss finance and what's going on in the world and how everything is affected and impacted by what's happening right now. I had a huge compliment yesterday, though, I forgot to share.
okay.
One of our viewers yesterday said that this show, the Today Show, as far as he's concerned, is the best show on the internet.
Ah,
Well, I know it's the most informative, right? I thought that was huge. And thank you for that. Someone in the
yeah.
industry, too. And of course, our beautiful Kathy Bell is here. She had a birthday
Uh,
yesterday. So, good
yes,
morning,
happy
Kathy.
birthday,
Nice to
Kathy.
see you. And she's our backup person for the Today Show at the Disability Channel. So, what's new and exciting in Southern California, Ramin? Over to you.
Well, it is Southern California. It's nice and it's been actually warm now. And yeah, people are getting ready actually for Halloween. And of course, politics is in a lot of people's minds. There's 2 more weeks, exactly 2 weeks. They'll
Mm-hmm.
have the elections in the United States, and which obviously affects the
Everything.
whole world in a
I'm watching.
very. Go ahead.
No, I'm watching it closely.
Yeah, I think everyone is, and it's funny. Even overseas, they're watching it even closer than what's happening inside the country because I think it is a big contrast this time, and it's a very unusual circumstances at this time with a lot of geopolitics going on top of everything else. So yeah, it's very much so in everybody's mind, and that's what I thought today. Well, we are gonna just make it some fun things, but really concentrate on what are the markets are telling us at this moment 2 weeks ago. What are they telling us? What history tells us? Is it favoring the Democrats? Is it favoring the Republicans? In this situation, it's not even the parties, it's actually the candidates themselves, which that makes it interesting. And we also talk about the markets. We talk about as far as seasonality, are there some advantages you can use to make money in this environment? Things that you can look for and for the next 2 months. Can you make money in stock market with this circumstances? But also, I had a very good question from one of our favorite uh, members here. Sylvia had a great question, and I thought, why don't we go over the question and answer it in our show because it was wonderful. So, if anyone is interested in finding some answers, sometimes they have these questions that they cannot, they can go to YouTube and all the social media, but it's a lot easier to just focus on it and could spend some time and just explain it. So I think everyone can take advantage of it. So that's what I thought we'll do also today. So everyone else is welcome to send us or either email us or text you and come up with a
Mm-hmm.
question. And the following week we'll go over it. So yeah, so that's what's going to happen today. And glad to be here. It's been a
Great.
oh, so,
Well, I've been watching the various, travels of Trump and Harris. And, if they would just take the time and energy that they use to find fault with the other person and focus on their platform and what it is they plan to do. I find that I know that's all part of the game and everything, but she's lying and he's lying and that never happened. And I worked at McDonald's. I always wanted to, but she said she did and she didn't. And all that kind of stuff. I find that really There's not so much of that in Canada. When there is an election, they don't kind of get on there and badmouth the other person to the extent. So I don't know if that's just part of the game of politics, but certainly everybody's watching this election because it's how do you let me ask you a question. What do you think are the general feelings of the American people as it relates to who they have to choose from?
Okay. Yeah, it's an excellent question because, again, it all depends demographically where they are,
Mm-hmm.
um, generationally. But before I do that, because you had an excellent point talking about the politicians. So, how about if I share a little story?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. It's not really a story, it's a little joke. But anyway, so, a holy man and a politician, they arrive at heaven's gate and they greeted at St. Peter, right? And after doing all these formalities, St. Peter says, well, I'm going to show you to your quarters. So here's a politician going with the holy man. And then they walk into this little single room with a small bed, a chair, and a table. And St. Peter says, holy man, this is your room. And all of a sudden, now the politician is like, what am I going to get? If he got this little room, where am I going to go? So they walk around, and then St. Peter stops in front of this beautiful mansion, beautiful gardens, lots of rooms. And he says, politician, this is your quarter. And politician is like shocked. What is going on? How come this holy man got that little room and I'm getting this big quarter mansion? And well, uh, St. Peter says, we do things differently here because we've had thousands and thousands of great men, holy men have come. You're the first politician who's arrived here, and we honor that. So basically, that tells you about story about politicians. So when you say that like that's bad, the morality is they do whatever it takes to get elected. So going back to your question about the feelings, and we will talk about like the stock market works the same way. It's about unexpected, not knowing. Markets don't like uncertainties. So now we have two qualities here. And I think the disadvantage that Vice President Kamala Harris has going after Trump, Trump is a known quantity. People who really don't like him, they don't like him. I mean, even his own party, because they know who he is. I mean, he's put his foot in his mouth many times. He's done things. So, and when you go back with the last 12 months, what has happened, everything is out there. So I think it's not the best way just keep saying how bad he is a right strategy, at least in my opinion, because people already know. The challenge that Vice President Harris is she is not a known quality. And because of that, if I were in her situation, I would have been more about me and the qualities that she brings and not a canned in the sense of, oh, we'll do this. As a human, what she can make a difference. And I think that's the challenge she has. So this, as we will look at the markets, people, the markets are doing, stock markets are doing great. And generally, when I say generally, actually, 76% of the time when the markets are up for the year, and stock market in the United States, the Dow, which is up over 13%, the incumbent party wins 76% of the time. And this goes back for 30 elections. So when is like this, the right now, what is happening with the markets, very strong. And it is the way this strength has been, especially since August 31st. That's another barometer we use. If the last 2 months, which is from September 1st to October 31st, when the markets are up, what happens is that the incumbent party is a shoo-in. As a matter of fact, 97%. or actually 15 out of 16 times that elections the party won. And as a matter of fact, when I go back to 2012, President Obama was running, for re-election, and it was a close actually. And then the markets finished 0.4% on October 31st from August 31st, and he got reelected. So there's a good history going on. So right now, Democrats should feel comfortable. The question is, the markets themselves, the asset classes that we look at, they're not confirming that. And I think the challenge is, this is one of the most unusual times because like President Biden is not running. So we have a new candidate came in. So, and as I mentioned, because she's not known, that's throwing the challenge to our historical statistics. And going back to the, you know, constituents and what they think, again, United States, because of our the voting system, the way we work, each state, it could be the minority state, can dictate the whole election. So that's why they're pandering to the 6 or 7 swing states. And, all of a sudden you see 50,000 people, they will really decide for 330 million population. So the idea is this, that what is the average investor feels, not from the market's point of view, but also from their pocketbook. And I know for a fact, people still, I tell you, I just got my, at least in California, I got a car insurance bill.
The Disability Channel would like to thank our existing sponsors. We really appreciate the support and kindness from the BIAs across the GTA, Ontario, Canada, and our friends in the USA. We love making new friends. Thank you for supporting our existing employment programs. Introducing Veteran House Alliance International Monthly 50/50 Raffle. Purchase your ticket today, link on display, and have a chance to win cash and help a great platform supporting veterans.
It's up 54%. 54% in 1 year.
What?
And insurance companies are leaving some of these states. So if you're an individual or a family, especially if you have young kids, what happens is, when you have the bill that you have to have, because there's a competition, but they're all doing the same thing. So things like that does affect the pocketbook, which, the stock market does not translate to that. That's a wealth effect. And generally a working class, they don't have a lot of holding in real assets and the markets themselves. So, but that's what's happening right now. So there's this separation. As I mentioned, my bottom line will be the known quantity versus unknown. And that's what they have to convince. But a lot of people have already started voting. And
Yes.
it's one of the largest. I think one advantage that the Democrats had in the last election, they had a great operation for the registration, pre-votes going out, mail, voting by mail. But I think Republicans caught up with that. So they are active. So yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. And what the markets are telling us, I'm looking at the dollar, I'm looking at gold, I'm looking at, of course, stock market, interest rates, Bitcoin. There has been a big swing in the last 3 weeks, and these assets are moving up. So interest rates are actually going up, which that means bond markets are coming down. And what is happening, that tells us there is a concern about inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And that dictates the policies of more towards Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Because Donald Trump, all you can hear is about tariffs, right? Well, he goes to Michigan. We are not going to take anything to Mexico. We're going to put 100, 200% tariffs. From a free markets point of view, tariffs, they tried in 1930s. A free economic politicians, or economists, they obviously they don't believe in tariffs. They believe in open markets. But you look at around the globe right now, wherever you go in Europe, you go from Netherlands to Austria to France to Germany, there is this populistic, nationalistic movement, anti-immigrant movements. And when I say anti-immigrant, we think of, again, United States with their borders, and we think about like Netherlands or France and stuff. In Iran, there are, United Nations says, about 4.5 million Afghanis as a refugee. That's the official. Unofficial is about 8 million of immigrants or undocumented. Some of them are 2 million undocumented. And Iran is last month started trying to deport them, 2 million of them. So you see these things. I mean, you go to Jordan, to Syria, there's all of these, Turkey, Egypt, that there are a lot of these issues are really coming up. So when you have something like that, when Donald Trump talks about tariffs or talks about, anti-immigration, well, it kind of resonates with some of the population. And of course, that has huge effects all over the world. When you're talking about partners, obviously he's talking about Europe, he's talking about Mexico, he's talking about China. And because of that, that's why we see gold is all-time high. And the dollar has moved tremendously in last 3 weeks. It's like parabolic. And usually gold and dollar do not move together. Usually because you're buying gold in the dollars or the dollars in gold. So basically that tells us, well, something is happening. And why is it inflationary? Well, the reason is if I bring everything here, there's not much competition. We have to pay the payers in the United States, our labor in the United States, the material dollar. So you don't have that competition. What used to be like cheap labor, the consumer has to pay more. But people are okay with that, it seems like, in the places that he talks to. So the question is, the idea is to have enough growth to pay for that. But Bitcoin, he's a big advocate of cryptocurrencies now. All of a sudden he was against it, but cryptocurrency has had a big move. Interest rates have moved much higher as soon as the rates were cut in the United States. That's the big one, the 50 basis, which, by the way, Canada is having one coming up. Canada will be, there's a very good chance that they are going to cut their interest rates by 50 basis point, because the concern is that there would be slowdown in economy. We better be ahead of the game. They want to make sure they feel inflation is under control. Europe did that last week. They cut 0.25%. And as a third time, they're going to continue. UK will be coming up in November. They're going to cut their interest rates. So we are in a cutting interest rates. I mean, the interest rate is cut. It's supposed to go down, but the markets, actually, interest rates have been going up in the last almost 4 weeks when the interest rate were cut here. So, it affects your mortgage rates. If somebody buys a house, if you are a business getting a loan, so those are affecting you directly. So a long answer to your short question is that what is people, depending on where they're standing. And it's funny that even Gen Zs that, they were born up to 2007 or 2009, I think, it's like they are more active in the politics and they're more independent than before. One thing I will also add, unless we need to take a break, I'll.
Well, we have a couple of good comments here I want to put up when you're done. So
okay,
to get your feedback.
One of the things very special for this election, more than ever, and that's what another thing I think is separate is, access to information, whether it's wrong or right. I mean, what I mean is the truth or not. We talk about the generations, about Generation Z, and there's just so much information that I, like, for instance, as a candidate, cannot come out and say something and not vet it out. So immediately, I'm like a 25-year-old, and I said, "Oh, wait a minute, Ramin said this. Let me go." Ramin said, if the markets are up during the incumbents, they will be upset and say, "Oh, have them been studied?" So immediately, because of this accessibility to information,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to rely on the experts, CBS or Fox or MSNBC go do the work for you, or Sky. You do it yourself and say, wait a
Mm-hmm.
minute, based on these studies, yeah. And that's what I think the challenge Vice President Kamala Harris has, because, Trump says anything. I mean, but he says so much. People just expect him to say things. And when you talk about him, it's been said so much that they already know a
Yeah.
lot of bad, or if there's good, they know that. So that's what the challenge, I think, it is in today's world, all over the world, because everybody has access to information now,
Right.
not just United
And
States.
I would say he doesn't have any filters,
Yeah, he doesn't, and it's
right? He doesn't have
sometimes
any
it's
filters.
good, sometimes it's bad, but that is what it is,
Yes.
and he doesn't.
All right. Well, let's go to Simon has a couple of comments here. So the first one is about Trump. So this is just an opinion of his. I think Trump overall would be good for the financial economy because he would get Powell out and get a federal governor to lower interest rates and boost the real economy with more leverage available. What do you think of that, Ramin?
Well, Simon, you're in more of a, yes, economic friendly market. I think a lot of well, more right leaning constituents, they are kind of fed up with Powell. As a matter of fact, when Powell came into power, it was 2017 and 2018, and when immediately he increased the rates, and Powell had not had any experience in really relating the communication, and the markets dove. I remember the Christmas time, and the markets had one of the worst really drops, and he could not say why he did it. And of course, he got reprimanded in January of 2019, and like Trump said, "Why did you do this?" And he ended up reversing the whole thing. So, and the idea was he didn't have the communication skills. And what happens is right now that there's this question that the Powell did the drop the rates, right in November by a big amount, and doing it, maybe it was more political because he knows he will have his job. But he's right. I mean, if Trump gets elected, there's I think, very little chance Powell will be there. Um, you have to remember about our central bank system here. Almost every one of them are from academia. They have been studying, they know the theories, majority of them, except Kashkari, every one of them, they never had a real job. They've never been a business owner, they've never worked with the businesses. So it's great on paper, and they have amazing tools. If you go to any of our Fed, United States, we have St. Louis, we have Atlanta, we have New York. If you go to their website, it's unbelievable amount of free information. So it's great data. But data alone doesn't make life. It doesn't give you that experience of anxiety when, as I mentioned, your insurance goes up 50%. It doesn't, okay, if I'm making 200,000 and my insurance went up $1,000, yeah, I can afford it. But if I'm making 40,000 and my insurance went up 1,000, that's a big difference. So it's not about just the data. And I think that's what the problem is with a lot of our governors in the Fed, that they are very smart, very educated people, but life experiences, that's not working. So the markets, the way they're looking at is when President Trump was president, average market, there's a debate for that, but it was about 16.2% for the 4 years, which one of the highest. I think President Clinton was another one, and then President Reagan. But he had one of the highest. So this thing, Simon, one of the other things is the tax policies. There's a big contrast with the two candidates, and that's another thing that whether it's the politics of Middle East, but I'm just going to talk about economics. We did a study in, I just didn't appear really, but looking for some of the firms that looked at the research. If President Harris becomes, she's the president, it will the corporate tax rates will move up in 2028 and even maybe higher. But also we all have in 2025 we have the expiration of the tax cuts that we've had, and that will expire. So that tax, if it goes back, reverts back to the original rates, it will affect every single sector between 7 to at least about maybe 0.2%. So the biggest ones affected will be the communication services, the discretionary. The least affected will be, believe it or not, like the real utilities. Utilities will be least affected. So we will have a big negative effect on the sectors just because of the tax reversion, versus if Trump gets elected, you will actually have about 5 to 6% positive reflection on their earnings. And that's all the sectors. And it is something to consider. So the tax policies do play a role. As far as the deficit, neither one of them have answers. They just the expansion will continue. We are at over $35 trillion of debt. And they cannot afford, and I've said it before, globally, the world cannot afford to have a higher interest rate. We will collapse. I mean, the United States has a dollar, so that the dollar is keeping us afloat because everybody has to, the majority of the world has to use dollar as a reserve currency. But we cannot pay, doing nothing and paying, doubling our interest payments. So by nature, by force of the nature, that has to be reduced to help our economy. And kicking the can down the road all the time, that's not going to help. So I don't want to get political, who's going to be better, but I'm just saying the facts are the businesses, the small businesses would prefer, obviously lower tax cuts. They would prefer smaller business, stronger dollar. They will have manufacturing will prefer to have things in the country. But again, that would be inflationary, but it's about the growth. So that the question is having more growth. And so I hope that answers the question.
Yes.
So.
Simon's got a few more coming up here. He's our money man. We should have him on the show.
Okay.
Let's see. He could come here as a guest. He said, I buy BTC ETF rather than Bitcoin Core because the ETF I can be tax exempt with my investment vehicle. I only get taxed when I finally take money out. Well, right. Hence why I rather buy BTC ETF than Bitcoin itself. That's the same as, we have a program here in Canada called RRSP, Registered Retirement Savings Program. And great, get a tax break when you purchase them. But then when you go to take them out, look out. Right. Oops.
Yeah. I think he's also talking about, with the Bitcoin, we always use, which is a cryptocurrency. We have Ethereum, but Bitcoin is the largest. So we did futures market, and futures market, immediately taxed. We did not have ETF. We had something was the GPTC, and that was more of a trust fund. But finally, the U.S. government, the SEC, allowed to have exchange traded fund for Bitcoin, which allowed average investors to get involved to real something that was mystery. Before that, if you wanted real Bitcoin, you had to have a wallet. It was a lot of complications with that, and then you had to do futures, and but the ETF is like any other asset class. One of the problems with the funds used to be that that expense ratio, the spread we call, and now that has been also been pretty uh, it has been lowered. The competition more like BlackRock, and there are more companies are coming with the ETF. So you do have a variety of ways, and now we have Ethereum ETF. So yes, a good observation, Simon. Yes, it makes it a lot easier when you have ETF to get in, get out. The timing of the market, not that it's recommended, but as a trader, well, I have to watch the timing. So yes, I'm glad you're taking advantage of that, Simon. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. So let's take a little break.
Okay.
And when you come back, more talk. More
Okay.
talk. Election, markets. Who are we choosing? Why are we choosing them?
All right. Great.
Okay.
The Disability Channel would like to thank our existing sponsors. We really appreciate the support and kindness from the BIAs across the GTA, Ontario, Canada, and our friends in the USA. We love making new friends. Thank you for supporting our existing employment programs. Introducing Veteran House Alliance International Monthly 50/50 Raffle. Purchase your ticket today, link on display, and have a chance to win cash and help a great platform supporting veterans.
Welcome back, everyone. You're watching the Today Show. First Tuesday back in a little while. Ramin and I have not been together on the show because I don't want to keep talking about it. But as most people know, I was out on a medical emergency, but back to normal, feeling better than ever. I feel like I've had a huge cleansing, purging of the past and trauma and physical ailments. And so just feeling really energized and back full time this week. So I've missed you all, including you, Ramin. I look forward to our Tuesday call. And of course, an hour from after this show, we'll be on the air with Doug Smith and a special guest that we have today, former NHL hockey player. And so thank you for being here, Ramin, and your patience in waiting for me to get back on track. That's been especially nice. So thank you for that.
No,
So where would you like to go next? Let me see. We have a couple of more comments. Simon. Simon is so sweet. Welcome back, Dr. Laurie. Cheers to good health. Yeah. Sylvia has a comment. People say that with every election, recession usually follows. Is that a yes or a no from where you're sitting?
Excellent question. So what I have to say about that, generally, again, we go back to historically. You have to remember they are the third year of election. The third year of presidency till the election. The incumbent party is pushing hard. That's why generally the third year of presidency is the best year. They're doing all these to stimulate the economy. Then the fourth year, they're continuing because it's election year. And then the new president comes. It's the first year, new initiatives. So generally, if the things are going to go bad, they're going to go bad the first and second year. Because the thing is, they want to push all the issues because they know they have another 2 years to fix it. So we've had historically, it is that the recessions do happen, especially if we've had a lot of underneath forces that they've been kind of artificially pampered. So yes, that's a good observation, Sylvia. Generally could happen, but then that's why the policies are important. Who's going to be in charge? One of the other things we have to be considered is who's going to be in charge of the Congress, the Senate, the House. The markets generally like split governments, the checks and balances. So, but it all depends on the momentum. Right now, believe it or not, the momentum is actually swinging more towards the Republicans and Democrats because the Democrats have a lot more candidates for re-election. So that is something to also consider. So these, like when you're just talking about presidency, the Senate plays a big role. Right now, the House is kind of a toss-up, but we still got 2 weeks. Anything can happen, but it's all about momentum. And talking about the momentum, another, I would say this is like a cheat sheet. If you want to know the day before or a few days before election, going to see who's going to be elected, especially, we've had President Trump since 2016. We've seen, running for the office at that time. Some of the tools that I use, and I don't do prediction, just some observations. It's interesting to look at the Mexican peso. We look at how the currency of Mexico is acting compared to the dollar. And historically, again, going back to when 2016 happened, you go back and you see Mexican peso, it was really weakening. And I know the market was kind of shocked that Hillary Clinton did not get elected because she was up. But the Mexican peso was telling us there are some bad news coming up. And as you know, Trump being protectionism, and so the same thing is happening right now. Mexican peso today, we are down a little bit against Mexico peso, but the dollar has been strong. But I used to, even for 2020, I also would observe what is Chinese yuan doing, but now both parties are kind of pampering to that anti-China, so that's not a good barometer. The same thing I would look at like Iran's rial, what is happening with Iran. And again, in 2020, because Trump was harsh, and that was like the reflection of Iran's rial. Now it's the whole Middle East is, it's a mess. We look at what is happening in all those countries, but Iran's rial is just reflection of that. But the Mexican peso is a good barometer. I want to give you another historical facts that, again, seasonality. We go back 53 years. In 53 years, and also looked at 25 years, the dollar generally starts going up anyway from second week of October till the election year. So you will see the strength in dollar, and generally after election, again, it goes back 53 years, the dollar actually starts going down. So people, just again, this is the statistics, it's the seasonality we call, it's historical. But what happens is, because of that, if you want to make purchases, if you want to be prepared, because there is this hopefully certainty in the election, now the election is over, generally dollar retraces, and actually by end of December actually is down. So just a little tidbit, if you trade currencies or if you want to travel somewhere, if you want to pay something, just till the day of election, the dollar generally is elected. So we have, but it's unusually the gold, dollar, Bitcoin have been pretty strong in the last few weeks. So, but that's another tidbit. So just give you a little hint how the markets are looking at. The last thing I would say, and then I would like to go over, Sylvia had a nice question, so I'd like to take enough time to go over that question. We talked about historically when the markets are up, obviously the incumbent party, which is, again, this is the second time only in history. We had Lyndon Johnson and the Nixon in 1968. This is the first time, sitting president all of a sudden, decided not to run. And, at that time we had Robert Kennedy, being assassinated. Here we had assassination attempt. So it's a very similarity with 68. So it's a little different, but generally, again, if the incumbent party was running, they would be doing well. But there's another way which has become more popular in the last few years. They're betting organizations out there, like in Ireland, but also there's Interactive Brokers, which is a platform, investment firm, or it's a platform that they actually take real money and they bet who's going to be the candidates,
Whew.
who will win, and real money. I mean, we had a few days ago somebody bet $37 million. They bought 4 contracts, so they are betting on Trump right now. Trump is up. As of the latest, he was up 56-44. So it swung. So in September, he was down to 48. Now he's up to about 56. So the people who have, I mean, who knows where the money's coming from, but people who have real money, they're making real betting. So this is not, it's just a paper. They actually, so that's right now is telling us that the swing, that there's a shift in the swing, and people are, we don't have enough history, so I cannot, again, this is something new. The seasonality is historical, but that's where the real money is betting on. So, 2 weeks, hopefully, 2 weeks from now, we'll know, or 15 days from now, rather than waiting another month following that. But right now, that's what these betting and also trading markets are telling us. So,
Wow.
anyway, let me do this in interest of time. And then if there's enough time, we can answer more questions or have some more comments. Sylvia had a great question. And she said, why its stock plunges? What factors? And when we talk in plunge, I mean, like dives down. And when I believe the question is more about a specific company and specific stocks rather than the market crash. Because we've had, we talked about bubbles. So yeah, the stock market, it could be events. It could be obviously inflation, interest rates, the government decisions, the politics, the regulations. They can always operational. For instance, a computer that, the New York Stock Exchange operation goes down, everything collapses for that second or 10 seconds or a minute. But I'm going to separate that. So this is going to be more about company specific. So as you know, majority of time, 80-90% of the time, especially when markets go down, they take almost 80-90% of the stocks with them, regardless of the fundamentals of those stocks, because it is a lot of money are in indexes or indices, and there are a lot of money in funds. So there's a lot of big institutional money. But this one, I'm going to separate it from the big picture, just specifically what happens to stock. Why all of a sudden you all excited, oh, my stock is at $100, and you wake up and you see it's like, what happened? It's $80. Why did I lose 20%? So what happens? Number one thing is we talked about certainty and uncertainty. So again, when we invest in stocks, we're looking at the future expectations. We are saying this company, if it did this much growth, made it this much profit, earnings, this is the cost, this is what the valuation is today. So every time we change those factors, anything that affects our future expectancy that we have, which could be all of a sudden, they lost a big contract, or something happened, there was malfunction in the factory. So those little things change everything. And of course, that's from the big picture. Interest rates change. That makes a huge difference. If they have large debts, if they have to do things like that, that affects their future expectations. So it's all about expectations. It's not about really reality. It's what we were expecting to be 5-10 years. So in order to do that, so what will affect that? One of the things, the simplest things is, all of a sudden, a major shareholder comes in and they sell the stock. Remember, markets we're talking about supply and demand. So if Warren Buffett comes and says, you know what, I don't like Ramin's company, or I don't like Bank of America, I'm going to sell 100 million shares. Well, that's selling, and he wants his money. So when you have a major institution, major shareholder, somebody comes and sells it, it depresses the price. And it has legs because now the other party sees that. They say, well, what does he know that I don't know? So they push it down. So that's one of the simplest ones. You also have these analysts, financial analysts, research analysts. They analyze the companies, and all of a sudden they see something that they're not favorable. They come out, they let the public know, and all of a sudden this news was not out there, and that shocks the markets. So all of a sudden, a negative research note can affect that. The other thing is we are in the United States, we are around the world. Every quarter we have earnings. In the United States, we're in peak earnings season right now. The next 2 weeks are going to be even huge, especially technology stocks. It's all about expectation. Tesla is coming up tomorrow. Tesla says, well, we're going to make this much profit. This much is like, call it the top line, bottom line. This much is the earnings will be, the net income. And they don't meet it. And we call it a whisper number, not what it was now out there. A lot of analysts, they look at that. So if they miss that, they get punished. The markets punish you if you don't meet your expectations. The fourth one is, I will say, sometimes there's faulty numbers. Sometimes they cook the books and the truth comes out. Somebody finds out. Of course, we had Enrons of the worlds. We had WorldComs of the worlds in the early 2000s. So those numbers have to be adjusted. And sometimes these numbers have to go back a few years. So all of a sudden, that domino effect. And when the fifth thing is, you will see again a big drop. You see companies come and give a fantastic results. They say, oh, we made so much profit. The market says, well, great. It's good that you did that. But what are you going to do us next? It's all about next, about future. So we call that guidance. So I can come and tell you, because of the timing of things, I just use a simple example. For instance, we had, which is not a good thing in the sense, but we had like a hurricane season. And then now we got to build all those things. And let's say a year ago it happened and we built that. But if we don't have any more, if I don't have any more construction, well, it's good that I made all that money. What am I going to do with that money? If there's no projects left for me, or if there's a big customer left me. So it's the guidance is the next big thing. One more thing, it happens quite a bit, especially it happens in mining, in energy, a lot of commodities, it's accidents. You could have a company that, in 2011, like we had the British Petroleum, we have Exxon Valdez, there's a liability suits, there's a Boeing 737, we have these malfunctions, and they can last because not only from the liability side, but also reputation side. So sometimes those accidents, it could be a mining accident, and those can really plunge the stock. Now, the question you have to ask, was this accident a one time or does it have legs? So if it was one time and it was something that you could see that, okay, they can remedy the problem, they can actually fix, that's a great buying opportunity. But if it is multiple occasions, there's these liabilities are going to continue, the legal, draining the company, then, you think about electric vehicles, you think about the batteries, those are the things that we have to take into consideration. That also plunges the stock. The seventh one I would say is the scandals. The scandals happen, things happen. Even simple things, the CEO has an affair. All of a sudden, this is like, oh, what happened and what else is going on? So more of a personal, but that one you can follow through. Amazon, like Jeff Bezos, went through the divorce. All of a sudden, his wife is taking half of the stock. What is she going to do with the stock? So, but the scandals could be also, again, accounting scandals. So those are very important to see the depth of it and how deep it goes. Is it like one-dimensional? And the last, so I don't want to bore you too much. I just want to give like more clarity. The last one I would say it would be a sympathy. So, and that's also could create a good buying opportunity. So if you're like looking for opportunities to buy something, is it happens like for instance in pharmaceutical, in biotechnology, in medical, like FDA, let's say we found Alzheimer's solution and we are in the same similar situation, or we're working in the similar path, and they denied something. So if I'm in the same venue, well, it could affect me. Or I mentioned about electric vehicles. One electric vehicle had this problem. All of a sudden, it could affect others, whether it was um, a big drop in sales, semiconductors. So there is the wide industry effect, because maybe they know something. If it's affecting one company's sales, is it going to affect mine? So we call that sympathy. So that one, it allows you to do a little more investigative work yourself. So maybe if your company is different than that, and we can see that in AI, like artificial intelligence situation too, um, that could create an opportunities for you. So Sylvia, I hope that was helpful. These are like some of the more obvious. I just want to pick the top 8, tell you it's the bottom line is about expectations, and it's surprises. Surprises, and that goes back to the whole theme of our politics, right? People do not like surprises. So they like to know their enemy. Sorry to say, like, when we had the Cold War, we knew what we are going against. But when you don't have, and you have these guerrilla tactics and the hacking and cyber security and all that, that's even worse. So it's good to know and keep your enemy close, as they say, so you know where they stand, than not knowing. And the same thing again in politics is non-known quantity. People, if they hate you, they hate you. They know. But if they don't like or they don't know you, they want to like you. But if they don't have any reasons to like you, well, then they rather go with something that they know. So it just the bottom. The same thing happens with the stocks. So anyway, that's our little
Well,
comments. So,
I have a couple of questions here from Simon. So I'm going to get you, I'll wrap up the show.
okay.
I'll put the comments up. Perhaps you could copy them down, Ramin, and we could answer them on the next show, because our timing is almost up for today.
Yes.
So here's Simon's questions. I'll put them up there for you to take some notes, Ramin, and then we can talk about that next week. So first of all, I want to put a shout out, a big thank you to all of the people who were here live today. Our live audience has increased since I came back. I'm wondering if they're worried that I'm not coming back. Okay, so that's a good thing. Thank you for being here live. That's always fun. But in the meantime, we're also streaming live on Laurie Davis' personal Facebook page and YouTube channels, Laurie Davis Show Host and 5 Minutes to No Limits. So thank you everyone for being here today and asking such great questions of Ramin. He's the man, he's in the know. Historically and financially, I don't think there's anything we could ask him that he wouldn't be able to answer, but that's just what I know. We'll be back in an hour with Doug Smith, the Press Box, with a very special guest, Slater. I can't pronounce his last name, but NHL hockey player, young man with a journey and a story. And then tomorrow, wellness. And tomorrow I'm going to do a show on anger, the positives and negatives about anger, because anger is not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of people think it is, but it's not. It's very healthy. And I think I just had a big anger purging actually with my surgery and everything. And also I'm going to talk about the veils of trauma and how we make our decisions through the veil of trauma. And so kind of combined. And that's what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. I'm going to do a solo show tomorrow because every once in a while I like to go solo. And that's what's coming up. And on Thursday, we have a beautiful guest. Actually, he has his own podcast for veterans. And Jill and I will be talking to Mark. And Friday's up for grabs. So if you've got something fun you want to do for Friday, let me know. And we'll bring you in. And Simon, you talked about coming on the Press Box, but I think you should be on this show as a guest. because you have lots of great questions and ideas. All right, over to you, Ramin. Any goodbye comments before we go?
Well, I mean, it's just wonderful to be back. It looked like to be with the family again. So I appreciate all the comments, great questions, and it is exciting times. These are the times that it's good and bad, but we look for positive and look for bright future, especially for our newer generations, younger generations. Make sure they are safe and they are prosperous. So, and it's wonderful to be alongside you, Dr. Laurie. Great to have you back. So,
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And you'll be here for Halloween. I can hardly wait because I'm going to put you to work and you can hand out treats.
Okay.
I get about 100 kids. So I'm at either that or you're going to do doggy daycare and keep Pride out of the way. So, you know, you're going to be working anyway on Halloween. All right. Well, goodbye, everyone. And we'll talk to you all soon. All righty.
Yes. Goodbye.
The Disability Channel would like to thank our existing sponsors. We really appreciate the support and kindness from the BIAs across the GTA, Ontario, Canada, and our friends in the USA. We love making new friends. Thank you for supporting our existing employment programs. Introducing Veteran House Alliance International Monthly 50/50 Raffle. Purchase your ticket today, link on display, and have a chance to win cash and help a great platform supporting veterans.